You're the one who got into the company with a convenient lie, aren't you? You thought you wouldn't get caught, but your lie is totally obvious. I can speak 10 languages and joined a company through mid-career recruitment. This company mainly deals with imported goods, and while they used to do a lot of business with Europe and America, recently they've been expanding trade with Asian countries like China and South Korea. However, the woman who became my boss assumed I was lying about being able to speak 10 languages and constantly hassled me about it. One day, documents related to a major Chinese company were tampered with, putting our negotiation in serious jeopardy. We had already checked to ensure there were no issues, so someone must have tampered with them. We need to compare it with the original documents to see what's been altered. Is there anyone who understands Chinese? Here's my stellar handling of the situation in 3 languages. My name is Madeline. I was born to parents working for a multinational company. My mother is half British and half German, and my father is half Japanese and half Chinese. Both of my parents were raised bilingually by their grandparents, speaking at least 5 languages. Naturally, in our daily family conversations, we spoke American English, British English, or German with my mother, and Japanese or Chinese with my father. People often ask if it was tough or confusing, but for me, it was just normal. To give you an idea, you can think of it like different dialects of English. By the time I was aware of it, I was already fluent in 4 languages. Until I was old enough for elementary school, I traveled to various countries with my parents due to their job transfers. But when I reached school age, my mother wanted me to stay at the same school during elementary years, so I was sent to my maternal grandparents in England. The school I attended in England was a bit unusual. It taught 41 different foreign languages. Looking back, my grandparents probably considered the frequent relocations of my parents. The school had students from all over the world, and we could speak in various languages, such as Hebrew, Norwegian, and Japanese. Depending on my mood, I spoke Chinese, English, or Japanese. I also naturally picked up French because one of my close friends was French. Additionally, students from other countries would sometimes teach their native languages. We learned many practical languages, not only from teachers, but also from our friends. Everyone valued their own language and respected others' languages too. Our teacher used to say, "Being able to speak many languages should give you confidence. You will take pride in yourself through this multilingual ability." It was true. Although I was initially confused, by the time I was in the higher grades, speaking multiple languages had become second nature, and I took pride in it. In middle and high school, I lived in various countries with my parents. Thanks to my grandparents, who taught me multiple languages, I could attend school without any issues wherever we went. With each transfer, I deepened my knowledge of the local language, becoming even more proficient. As a result, I can now speak 10 languages fluently, including the original 4. After graduating from university, I traveled to different countries, working for multinational companies just like my parents. But when I turned 30, I started to feel tired. Although experiencing new things in different countries was enjoyable, I wanted to try settling down. After spending 30 years, 1/3 of my life, wandering around different countries, I wanted to experience living in the same country for several years. And around that time, my father contacted me. A friend of his was running a company dealing in imported goods, and they were looking for someone who could speak multiple languages. Although they mainly traded with Europe and America, they were expanding into Asian goods, particularly from China and Korea, and needed someone proficient in both areas. Such a talent was hard to find, so they asked my multilingual father if he knew anyone suitable. I gladly accepted the offer and joined my father's friend's company mid-career. At this company, my boss was a 35-year-old woman named Sandra. I heard she was quite beautiful and competent, but she seemed to be a terrible person. You're the one who got into this company with a convenient lie, aren't you? You thought you wouldn't get caught, but your lie is totally obvious. What do you mean by a convenient lie? I heard you were proficient in 10 languages. Isn't it embarrassing to exaggerate so much? You know, we deal a lot with overseas clients. If you tell a poorly thought-out lie, you'll only regret it later. She had decided from our first meeting that my claim of speaking 10 languages was a lie, and had been hostile towards me ever since. It's not a lie. I'm a multilingual speaker, and that's why I was scouted and hired mid-career. How well can you speak them? Just knowing a few phrases doesn't count as speaking the language. Annoyed by Sandra's persistent belief that I was lying, I took a deep breath and responded with a forced smile. If you watch my work, you'll see how proficient I am. Later, I found out from colleagues that she was fluent in 4 languages: English, Japanese, Italian, and French. In a company with a lot of international business, bilingual and trilingual employees were common, but quadrilinguals were rare, and she took pride in that. She often bragged, "You need to speak at least 3 languages. I speak 4. Aren't you embarrassed to use translation software? You should be able to read this easily, right?" Her arrogant attitude was well known. Then I was hired, a multilingual speaker of 10 languages. Her pride couldn't accept having a subordinate who spoke more languages than she did. She constantly harassed and looked down on me. I thought she would eventually see the truth and left her alone, confident that my abilities would speak for themselves. An unexpected opportunity to prove myself came a few months after I joined the company. By this time, I had a clearer picture of the company's dynamics. Despite being seen as competent, Sandra had her subordinate prepare documents she was supposed to create, only doing the final checks herself. She would then present them as her own work, essentially stealing credit. However, with the increase in business with China, alongside our usual dealings with Europe and America, things changed. While she could push English tasks onto her subordinates, she couldn't handle the Chinese documents herself. No one else in the company besides me was proficient in Chinese. Anticipating this, I offered, "I can handle the transactions with China." But she refused, saying, "Don't act so high and mighty. I'm not falling for your lies. We have translation software. I'll do it myself before I trust you with it." She couldn't stand that I could do something she couldn't. I backed down and focused on the tasks assigned to me from other projects. Then a major issue arose. "My documents were tampered with. Our negotiations are about to fall through." She panicked. The documents related to a major Chinese company had been altered, causing the counterpart to become furious and cut off communication. "We need to investigate and respond immediately. The counterpart said the documents were wrong. We had checked everything beforehand. Someone must have tampered with them. We need to compare them with the originals urgently. Does anyone here understand Chinese?" "I do." "Get on it. If you're lying, there'll be hell to pay. It's your responsibility if anything goes wrong." I took the original documents and the ones she submitted, comparing them in a hurry. If she had reviewed the documents again before sending them, she would have noticed. The product name was changed to that of another company. Anyone could see that with a quick glance. I was puzzled. It was indeed an unbelievable mistake, but could it really have made the counterpart so furious? There had to be something more. As I continued to read, I found the answer. Here, you used an honorific that makes us appear condescending. This term is used by superiors when addressing inferiors. Using it with a business partner is extremely disrespectful and implies that we are superior to them. What? That's nonsense. I didn't use such a term, and I checked everything properly. In Japanese, the translation might be the same, but when translated into Chinese, the meaning changes. In China, language is adjusted according to the age and status of the person being addressed. It's similar to the use of honorific and casual speech in Japanese. What you wrote would be interpreted as, "You're beneath us, so this should suffice." I sighed. Confusing the product name with that of a rival company and treating them as inferiors? Of course they'd be angry. A colleague overhearing this commented with a hint of exasperation, "That's really bad. I'd be mad too. Didn't you always boast about your proficiency, Sandra?" Sandra turned red with anger upon hearing this. What are you implying? It's not my fault. The translation software is to blame. And someone must have tampered with the product name. It's not my fault. This computer was used by you until the end of work yesterday, right? I asked calmly. Yes, so? Someone must have changed it afterward. She refused to accept any responsibility, though I pointed to the computer screen and said, This shows the last modification time of the document, and it matches the time you were last using it. Huh? What are you trying to say? Sandra snapped, clearly frustrated. What I'm trying to say is that no one else touched this document. You were the last person to update it. The room filled with accusatory stares directed at her. Sandra, flustered, tried to defend herself. Then you handle it. You claim to be proficient in Chinese, right? You should be able to deal with it. They're so angry, and I can't understand what they're saying. They were speaking English, but it got so fast that it became incomprehensible. I'll handle it. I'll call them back and sort this out. I sent the corrected documents and made the call. The counterpart was speaking a mix of Chinese and English, switching to Chinese in moments of anger. I introduced myself in Chinese and apologized profusely. The mistake with the product name is inexcusable, and I sincerely apologize. As for the disrespectful language, it was an unintended consequence of using translation software. We deeply regret any offense caused. I apologized once again. I would like to explain how this happened and assure you that there was no intent to disrespect your company. Could you please listen to us again with a calm mind? The person on the other end sounded surprised. You can speak Chinese. The question was asked in Cantonese. I immediately switched to Cantonese to continue the conversation. Yes, my grandfather is Chinese, and my father is half Chinese. Because of that, I've lived in China, although my Chinese is still not very good. Oh, you can even speak Cantonese. Because of you, I'll overlook the previous disrespect. But there won't be a second chance. Chinese people can be very forgiving towards family and close friends. Once I started speaking Cantonese, the other party's tone softened, and they became more willing to listen. We want to do business with someone we can trust. If you'll be our contact from now on, we're willing to sign the contract. Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you. By agreeing to be their contact, I managed to salvage the deal that was on the brink of falling apart. As soon as the call ended, Sandra, who had been waiting anxiously, grabbed my shoulder. How did it go? You managed to fix it, right? They agreed to proceed with the contract on the condition that I will be the one in charge from now on. Upon hearing this, her face twisted with rage. What? Why are you taking over? Are you trying to steal your superior's job? Who do you think you are? It was their condition, not mine. If we hadn't agreed, the deal would have fallen through. Would you have preferred that? My rebuttal made her bite her lip in frustration. Sandra, isn't it better this way? If Madeline hadn't stepped in, the deal would have been off. We owe her a lot. Exactly. Who knows what would have happened without Madeline? My colleagues rallied around me. Realizing she had no allies in the room, Sandra raised her voice in a panic. It's only natural for a subordinate to support their superior. I had reached my limit. I decided to say what I needed to say. Normally, a superior supports their subordinate. If you had let me handle this from the beginning, none of this would have happened. That's not my fault. The translation software is to blame. She kept shifting the blame, so I pointed out the crucial issue. What about the product name change you claimed was tampered with? The last update was made by you. If someone really tampered with it, they must have sneaked in while you were away from your desk or hacked it externally. That's a serious issue. Sandra visibly trembled and started speaking in a shaky voice, contradicting her earlier statements. You don't have to go that far. Maybe they didn't mean any harm. No, the deal was almost ruined. Someone who would do such a thing could do anything in the future. Stop it. I'm telling you it's fine. There's no need to go that far. As Sandra strongly denied it, My colleagues, clearly amused, began to back me up. That's not true. This is a serious matter. We need to find the culprit. Until we do, we can't feel secure at work. There should be security camera footage. Let's check it. Yes, let's contact the security office and have them review it. As the chatter grew louder, Sandra finally couldn't take it anymore and shouted, Stop! It was me. I was the one who made the mistake with the product name. I admit it. It was my fault. Is that good enough for you? She stood there with her fists trembling at her sides. At the time, you just kept blaming others for your own mistake. Is that what a responsible person does? I'm sorry, but I'll have to report this to the president. The president? Why? It was the president who hired me. He specifically asked me to handle transactions with China and other Asian regions. That's why I suggested to you that I take over. I wasn't trying to undermine your position. I intended to support you, but it's unfortunate it came to this. With those words, Sandra collapsed weakly. Since then, she became remarkably quiet. No matter how much she tried to protect an attitude of I'm competent, her colleagues viewed her coldly. Whenever she tried to pass her work on to others, they'd laugh and say, We don't want to be accused of tampering with documents again, so please take responsibility for your own work. They didn't even bother to hide their contempt. Sandra had lost all semblance of authority as a superior. The president, recognizing the issue with her behavior, decided that someone who could handle any situation instantly was needed. As a result, I, who could speak 10 languages, was made the person in charge, and she was placed under me, someone she had previously looked down upon. I was worried about how my colleagues would react to me, a newcomer, suddenly getting a managerial position. However, since they were used to dealing with merit-based overseas companies, they accepted the decision surprisingly smoothly. Well, there's no one more qualified than you. After all, there's no one else who can handle 10 languages. My colleagues supported me with these words. They clearly preferred working under me rather than under Sandra. Unable to bear the cold stares from her coworkers and the fact she would now be my subordinate, Sandra eventually resigned from the company. 2 years have passed since then. I still work at the same company. This job is perfect for a language enthusiast like me, and I really enjoy it. Although I joined the company speaking 10 languages, I've learned even more over the past 2 years. In addition to German, French, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Italian, Russian, Tagalog, Arabic, and English, I can now speak Norwegian and Hebrew, languages I had only briefly learned from friends in elementary school. A Norwegian company approached us for a new deal, and while communicating in English, I also used my basic Norwegian. The representative was delighted. Although we didn't finalize the contract due to mismatched conditions, we started communicating personally, and now we teach each other languages over Skype. I teach him Japanese, and he teaches me Norwegian. Moreover, I've started a language class at the company once a week, which has been very popular. Currently, I'm teaching Chinese. Even the president attends these classes, and he brings lavish treats every time, turning the class into a social gathering. This has fostered excellent communication and camaraderie within the company. Although traveling to various countries was nice, I find it equally rewarding to live in the States, occasionally visiting my grandparents, and use my passion for languages at work. I am truly grateful to my father and the president for introducing me to this job.